Hello and welcome back to the Cartoonist studio. I know I said I'd be producing one on the Friday, but for those of you who saw the post I produced yesterday, this particular picture got a little bit ahead of me and it took me a bit longer to produce. And I've always been of the opinion that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So that's what I did. So what's today's cartoon? Well, most of you will already know that. Regulars will know that I said I was going to be doing some Christmassy themed pictures, watercolors. And for this week and next week, I'm going to be doing two of Christmas's favorites. Santa Claus today, or Father Christmas, or Pierre Noel, or whatever you want to call him. And next week, Rudolph. And the week after, that's my Christmas card to you. So, but we'll talk more about that as and when. So today, watercolor. And if you stay to the very, very end, I think I kind of created a way of making an image look like it's at dusk. You can do it with paints and all sorts of stuff. And I did kind of do that, but I came up with an alternative ending to it. So it's a technique that I think I've created. I'm not quite sure, but we'll get to it at the very end and you'll see for yourself. It gives the picture the air of being at dusk or very, very early in the morning when it's not pitch black, it's getting light, but it's still kind of dark. And how do you get that effect? I think I found a way. See you at the end of the video for that. Partway through, we'll also be talking about the materials that I use, the paper, you know, that kind of stuff, inks. And yeah, and then we'll just get the whole thing done. So great. Should we get cracking on with it? Should we see if I can mess up a perfectly good Christmas image? See if I can do just that. Right, off we go to a flying and roaring start. I'm not normally drawing this fast. I do draw fairly fast, but not this fast. But the whole idea here is to loosely get the idea down on paper. Also, because I'm going to light box this through, some people might say, well, light boxing, that's kind of cheating, isn't it? But it's not really, because as you can see here, I'm drawing the actual picture and then just light boxing it through. And the only reason I do that is because when you are producing, I think I mentioned in the previous video, when you are producing a sketch on watercolor paper, then you've got lots and lots of lines to lose. Even if you do ink the final picture in, you still got lots and lots of lines in the background. And I don't like that. I find that it's best if you've just got the one line. So as when you color it, it's in successive layers, which is what I do, then you kind of lose the strength and definition of that line. And seeing as I'm only inking the main character, the background which isn't being inked needs to lose the definition of its outline. An animator once told me, and I did work briefly in animation so I understand what he means, is that they are effectively tracing the illustration before with the slight movements in the next picture. But they're drawing largely most of the character again, so they trace it through. But they don't just want to draw the same picture, they have to give it some life and vitality, but all the lines have to be exactly the same as the one beneath, otherwise the image is juddery. So putting action in that line is as important as keeping true to the one below. Okay, onto the actual watercolour. Having masked off the areas that I want protected, I work wet in wet for the background, for the sky, shall we say. It's only the background that I work wet in wet for these particular pictures. And because it's a nighttime or early morning, shall we say, I go from my usual cobalt blue, which I use for daytime skies, into ultramarine or French ultramarine. Bringing the line down, and then about, I'd say halfway, just over halfway, I stop using the blue and start adding water to it, and that lightens it. And then at the very top I give another line of ultramarine blue and let that just dribble down. Then with some cadmium yellow I give the effect of, I suppose, the sort of early morning sunrise. Then in the background, just dabbling, this is going to be the sort of bushes or winter trees, shall we say, in the very, very background. I did this in a previous video. It's just dabbling, stippling in, and here where the water gathers at the bottom, just get a bit of piece of tissue and just let it soak up into the bottom of the tissue. Giving the foreground a bit of a darker green sort of Christmas tree type thing, punches out the woodland or the shrubbery, should we say, behind. Then with a credit card, just working the shapes of some trees in the distance, in that shrubbery. Then just a little bit of lighting sky. The tree is still wet, so just put in a few more layers. Just keep adding a few layers as the picture goes on. And then right in the background, give some base shrubbery. And a little bit of shadow down here. Like I say, it is still early in the morning or late at night, so the snow isn't going to be pure pristine white. It's going to be a kind of a blue. And then just using a dry brush, just look at some lighter areas, and then some shadow and some shade and little bits and pieces here for the tree. Put them on strong, dab them with your finger, keep on building up those layers. Now it's onto the flesh tint, which for me, I use vermilion red or cadmium red, heavily dilute it with water, and then add a little bit of yellow to it. And then once that's still wet, just dry off the areas there to point out where the light's coming from. You can put a few layers of slightly darker red on here because Santa's nose is red. Then it's onto the base red of Santa's outfit. I use, with this one, particular one is vermilion red. I give it a nice light base. Something for the rest of the layers to really work on, to adhere to. Because although I try and do a nice little flat drip line, it doesn't always work out that way. But when you put the second or successive layers on, it gets stronger and stronger, and those layers look extremely flat and give it a nice and pleasing look. And here we go again with the nose, giving it another layer of red, darkening it every time, and just softening the edge of the outer edge of that red to define where the light is. Okay, so now here we go with a thicker layer of red. All I do here is just add less water. Make it a little bit more creamy, not thick, not like it's coming out of the tube, because I am going to put more layers on, but definitely stronger and brighter. And always remember that whatever color you put down, it dries, I think, about a third lighter. And here we go again with yet another layer of red for the nose. And this is where you can see a bit closer how I soften it. Okay, so now I'll put down 2 layers. I'm about to work on the third one. And this is where I start to really define the light and shadow. You can see with a thumb, a little bit of light actually separates it from the main part of his mitten. And this will be seen as we go around the rest of the character. You'll notice it now when I start to do his cap. There we go. A little bit darker and a little more definitive. Now we start to build up the layers for the flesh. Now here I'm using the same red with yellow. I've added a bit more red to it and the tiniest amount of blue. Normally I'd use cobalt blue, but because the sky is ultramarine, I put a touch of ultramarine blue in there as well, just so as it keeps in line with the rest of the painting and the colours. It's a very subtle thing, shall we say. Now work on even more shade. I think this is one of the final shadings, one of the final layers, shall we say, for the heavy shading goes on. Now this red has also got a little bit of blue in, and it's also got some raw sienna. Because just the blue in there with the red, it kind of like messes it up. It mottles the red, I find. So by putting a little bit of a darker brown like a raw sienna, it gives it more of a shaded look. As I've mentioned in previous videos, my preferred shading color is made up of cobalt blue, or in this case ultramarine blue, and red, and then water it down. And as that shading gets stronger and stronger, you just put more and more blue in, or more and more red, depending on what you want. Now for the ruff of his cap and the ruff around his sleeves and the bobble and his beard, all I've got here is cobalt blue. I have gone to cobalt blue here, watered down very, very much more so than, say, the base layer of the red. And on the point of all the various colours and what I'm using, maybe now would be a good time for me to show you or tell you all the stuff that I've used for this particular painting, and probably most of my paintings. So without further ado, let's go on and I'll tell you what I used for this picture. Right, now, artist materials. The first thing I did, you'll notice with the picture, was I roughly sketched it out with the pen. So lots and lots of scratchy pencil lines and what have you. For that, I just used a very, very basic sketch pad. This is the most inexpensive one you can find. Probably get it for a couple of pounds, couple of dollars, whatever. Really not much. I'm not interested in it being a high quality piece of paper because it is just a rough. So tracing paper will work just as well. So that's all I used for that. And I just used a biro, a clicky pen, if you like. That's all I used. And then I light boxed that through. So I got the light box as well. Now you can use, I think I've explained before, I've got like a very flat electronic one. My dad made me one of those, like a drawing board light box he made, and that got broken one day. Very, very sad, but that was a good one. But if you're starting out and you haven't got a huge amount of money, and appreciate that today's society not many of us have, you can always use the window as long as it's daylight. Obviously don't do it at night time because it doesn't work very well. Right, and then the next thing I use is for this particular picture, it's this one. This pad is A4. If I'm doing commissions, I usually do it on A3. So this is my pad of watercolour paper. It's Aquafine Dale Rowney, Aquafine watercolour paper, and it's 300 gram, 140 pound paper. So that's my watercolour paper. The paints that I use, and there should be an image coming up now, and they are Winsor & Newton. I use Winsor & Newton. I'll use Dale Rowney. Most of them now, I'm edging out my watercolour paints and bringing in gouache. What do you call it? I call it gouache. So I use gouache, and then I think finally I've got my paintbrushes. Now some artists will say, I only use about 2 or 3 brushes, and I use a small one, a larger one, and a big bugger like that. He said sometimes I'll use 4, and once in a while I'll use 10, and very, very rarely I'll use 833,000. But you'll find that most artists have got quite a lot of brushes. We don't use them all, but when you do need them, they're handy to have around. So I've got quite a few brushes over there. And then finally, when it comes to the inking, I use Winsor & Newton India ink and my trusty brush, which I use for all my cartoons now. It doesn't matter what it is, cartoon strips, single panel gags, anything. I use that to put the outline in. The background of the painting doesn't have outlines. It's just the character that has outlines. It's something that I like to do. It punches the character out a little bit more. It's almost like an animated thing, with the animated character over the background. It's that kind of effect. That's the effect I was going for. Right, so that's all the stuff that I've got. And let's get back on with the picture, shall we? Right, so now you know what materials I use to mess up a perfectly good idea. You'll also have probably noticed that when I'm putting down the very, very base layer of the blue here, I'm leaving areas on the outer edges to show the white. And then when I build up the darker layers like I am now, the sort of second layer of blue, those white edges will become much more noticeable. Here I started thinking I'll just do that little bit round there for the blue, but I didn't like it. So I started experimenting, and for some reason I started, even though he's got a curly beard, I started flicking out lines of blue. And it really kind of worked, and it was one of Bob Ross's happy mistakes, shall we say. You'll get loads of those in pictures, and I certainly found quite a few in here. So now we're building up even more layers of blue, and you'll notice that white that I left out before is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that will be noticeable when I show you the technique that I created at the very end of the video. It'll become more prominent and there'll be reason why I did it. All will be revealed then. Okay, so now we're on to the green of Santa's sack. And again, we're going with a very light layer because the drip line is quite difficult to bring down around the sort of bobbles of his beard, shall we say. And the more time you spend getting it round that area, then it leaves sort of drip lines, shall we say. So if you give it a nice light base layer, then with the progressive darker layers, it covers the mistakes, shall we say, of the layer below. Then we'll work on, once again, more layers. The first layer of Santa's black belt. You'll notice that when I did that first little bit there, I feathered the edges so as it blends in a little bit. Not quite so strong a light as, say, on the white, but definitely noticeable when it's finished. And there are quite a few layers here because I'm building it up using lamp black. That's the black that I chose, just watered down and getting thicker and thicker as we go along. Here, I think kind of made a little bit of a mistake here when I started to blend in there. I should have blended in after I'd done the whole of the first bit of drip line, because you can now see there's a line defined there. Now, I did use that in the end as part of one of the creases or the folds, shall we say, of the sack. So it was once again a lucky, not a happy mistake, a lucky mistake. Building up the layer again. Now the top here, I've left it light at the top. This is on the second layer. That'll get more noticeable as those layers grow and grow. You'll also notice I'm starting to feather the outer edges, which accentuates the light coming from the side of him. Now it's on to yet another layer of this black. So I'm just literally adding more of the lamp black into the wash that I've previously created. And it's just building up layer upon layer, getting thicker and creamier as we go along. Now we're moving into the final layer of green, and it is notably darker. This is where you can get the effect of nighttime or early morning, where things appear to have a little bit more darkness in them. So this picture alone, I don't need to use the final technique that I used at the end, because it will still look like it's set in early morning or late at night. You just literally put more and more darker layers in there, maybe put a touch of black in there if you want to give it a little bit more body. So you can do it just that way, or you can do it the way that I'm going to show you at the end. I'm just giving you another technique, another tool in your box of tricks, shall we say. You'll also notice that I waited till just here, till it really pumps out the white lines that I left, or the lighter lines from the very, very base layer of the green. It pumps out those lines there for the bottom of the sack. And I think this is now probably the final layer of the black. I don't think I went any further with this now. I'll probably prove myself wrong and put another one on. But I think, if memory serves, this was the final layer of black. There you go, told you so. You should always listen to me. I know what I'm talking about, you know. Sometimes, well, very rarely. Now I just put on the yellow, which is, it's just a thicker cadmium yellow. Yes, very little water. And I've used it also up here at the top. It's always good when you're using a spot colour like the buckle and the patch at the top there to put it around a few places. It helps with the overall balance of the picture. And then on the second patch on his sack, almost to accentuate the one above, I give it blue. Blue is a good complement to the yellow above. And for this blue, I went back to the French ultramarine. And with a little bit of shading here, which is the cadmium yellow with a tiny little bit of blue in there, just worked out. Now, you probably can't see it very well, but it helps with the picture. Now I'm going on to really building up the shadow layers, should we say. So once again, we're going in there with the cadmium red, or you can use the vermilion, and then cobalt blue or French ultramarine. I think I use the French ultramarine here. So, and now I'm building up the shadow on the outer side of the nose, feathering it as I go along, and putting in some shadow around the beard, which is helping punch out the blue layers beneath it. Now I'm just tinkering around with the edges, building up layers that I thought maybe need a bit more of an accentuation, like I did with the moustache there. That is now sitting on top of the beard below it. Now here's a much, much darker one for the bobble. I don't know why I did that, it just seemed to work. After I feathered it, I thought, no, that really does bring out the roundness of that bobble. And with the same shaded colour, which is the red and the blue, I'm now going around the actual sack. I think that's the final bit for his nose there, feathered, finished. Now you can see here, now that's not a darker green, that's just the blue and the red. That's how it works as a shadow colour at its best. And then go just a little bit darker, and you can bring out the bottom folds of the sack. Now the final bit, load the brush with, I think it's zinc white, and just tap it over and give yourself the very fine flakes of snow. And then with the brush, go over and put some thicker ones in, which just add or accentuate the smaller ones, shall we say, and give it a good random look of snow. Because we all know snow is pretty random. Right, that's it, almost done. All that's left to do now is to give it a border. Normally I give my borders or panels a black outline, but this time I decided to go with a more festive red. Don't know why, it just seemed to work for me. And once the border's on there, it sort of like holds everything together. Borders always do a nice job of that. But you can see how the picture looks like it is at nighttime, not daytime. The colours aren't bright, in your face. They're very muted and built up layer upon layer, and I've got a density to them. So, like I say, you can, if you wish to, leave the picture at this stage, and your painting will look like it was either at night or first thing in the morning. But the technique at the very end will just give you another alternative. So that's it now, just the black outline. Like I say, just for the character, I've got this sort of look in my paintings at the moment where it's very, when I say Disney-esque, I don't mean they're Disney characters. I mean, it's that the backgrounds never had outlines. The characters did. And they always seem to jump out of the picture somewhat. And that's the look that I'm going for in my paintings. Obviously, you go for the look that you want in yours. If you want to do the background with a black outline, do it. Right, okay, I guess we're coming to the end of it all now. Like I say, it's just the black outline until I come back and explain the final technique at the end. So I'll leave you with some music. And but before I go, obviously, if you enjoyed this content and would like to see more like it, let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe, let everyone know about this channel, and that'll help it grow. And of course, there's always other ways of supporting me. Like I've got lots of books out that I've written and illustrated, and universal links for those are in the description below. Also, I produced a Christmas book, the first Christmas book I think I've ever done. And it's the Big Old Bear book, Big Old Bear's 12 Days Till Christmas. Go out and purchase that. Makes an ideal gift for your son, daughter, nephew, niece, granddaughter, grandson, or anyone who just enjoys my art and writing. Okay, I'll leave you to it, and I'll be back at the very end, as I say, to talk through the other technique. Until then, enjoy the inking and the music. Right, here we go. First of all, I mask off the outer edges, and I also mask off those white areas that I left in the original picture. Just mask those off, because they'll punch out when I put the final wash on. And the technique simply is, I got myself some lamp black, I really dilute it, and then just go from the top to the bottom with a good wash. As you can see, when it hits into the green there and the red, you notice that it's going a little bit darker. If you want to give it an even darker look, then put more black in there. And that's it. That's the technique. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you on the next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.